Hi, everyone, and welcome to the August webinar preparing for your high school fellow for senior year. My name is Murab Sarwar. I am a program associate working for Matriculate, and I am the campus lead for Notre Dame, Columbia, Barnard, and Emory. So today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what to expect as you start your senior year with your high school fellow. And so kind of going to start by taking a little bit of a dive into the survey feedback that you've all given us, not just from your high school fellows, but I think we'll look a little bit at advising fellows as well. We're also going to kind of give a little bit of a refresher on the timeline and kind of give you a better idea of what it looks like to be on track at this point. And then specifically, we'll also do a deeper dive into the August checklist and kind of make sure that we are hitting everything that we need to do to really set up high school fellows for success in the fall. For those of you that were paired, some of you as early as this week, trying to also understand that while you're paired in the summer, what an accelerated checklist goes like too. And so we'll talk a little bit about this as well during today's webinar. And then lastly, kind of really what the session is all about, giving a better preview for the fall. And with that, we'll talk about what really that day-to-day work looks like and what kind of milestones we'll be hitting. Specifically, we'll also really talk about a current milestone that's coming up very soon, which is the college list. We'll go into that as well. And then also lastly, we'll go into some methods of financial aid and scholarships, specifically the College Board Opportunity Scholarship. For those of you who have already been working with College Board students, you'll know more about this, but also just to provide better context of an opportunity that we can kind of highlight to our high school fellows. So let's go ahead and get started. So what's new? In the curriculum base, you'll see that we have an updated class of 2020 high graduation rate college list. And with that, you'll have a better idea of really that entire full list. And so if you are struggling to recommend schools or get a better suggestion, this can always be a place to go to just to jog your memory or to kind of like give yourself a starting point to research further schools. If you find yourself struggling, always kind of tap into the resources that you have, whether that be your other advising fellows or your head advising fellow as well. Updated in the resource space is also a state-by-state summary for how DACA operates. This is a really hard question and really tough to navigate. So again, a starting point to really get a quick gist and summary of really what to do. And then lastly, we'll talk about the College Board Opportunity Scholarship and what that looks like as an advisor and how you can better assist your students. We'll also go into this, later on in the presentation. But then lastly, also kind of really wanted to highlight some really exciting things that are happening within Matriculate. So for those of you, some of you may have already heard, but we're expanding and we're offering new fellowships. And so with that, we're offering the fellowship at UPenn, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Johns Hopkins University alongside Vassar and UCLA. So really exciting things that are happening soon. If you know any folks that are attending those campuses, feel free to put the word out. We just launched an eligibility form, so feel free to tap into that and let your folks know. So, and then lastly, with some more exciting news is that we just came out with the Advising Fellow Alumni Program. So for those of you who are alumni of being an Advising Fellow, for those of you who want to, again, tap into the nationwide network that is being established within Matriculate and the campuses that we're at, just to, again, really making this experience not just for high school fellows, but making sure that you are enjoying this experience as an Advising Fellow and then are able to tap into something much bigger than an individual within the alumni program. So some really cool things happening here. We've had a pretty busy summer, but excited to keep, announce some new things and keep doing this work that we're all on a path for. And to highlight the work that you've been doing for the summer, here are some high school fellow reflections. And so every single high school fellow, as you do, fills out a monthly survey. And so I think, kind of digging through, it's been really, really amazing to see just how important our advising fellows are and just how important the work that you're doing leads to. I think kind of just like looking at something like, just hearing that Matriculate and my advisor has been amazing so far. I'd planned on going to a super safe college in Houston, but now that I know better, and now I'm expanding my choices. I hope to keep working with my advisor and get into a fairly good college thanks to this program. That's really kind of just like all the work that we're doing, and is really important to see. So excited to kind of keep charging on this path with all of you, and just know that the work that you're doing with your high school fellow, even though you might not see the immediate benefits, is important. And so they're telling us immediately. So definitely bask in the good reflections that we're also getting. I also wanted to highlight some of the things that you all have been saying as advising fellows. Something like everything's been going really well. June was, obviously busy for a lot of folks. And then, but then just kind of understanding like the checklist has been doing, what you can just to make sure that you're all on top of everything. That's really great feedback to see. I think one thing I also wanted to definitely highlight, and something that I want to tell you all that we've been noticing, is just like really, it's on the difficulty of scheduling meetings with your high school fellows, and kind of just like having to hit this consistent, like, I can do this time, but they can't do this time. And so we totally, just want to say that we see you, we hear you, and we acknowledge all those things, but definitely appreciate the work and the effort that you're putting in to still meet with your high school fellow, because as you saw earlier, those meetings end up being really critical touch points to kind of keeping the work going and keeping the momentum going as well. So for those of you who've been really hit with those challenges of, having really unlucky times for meeting times, or for those of you who have gotten, an uninterested high school fellow, or an active high school fellow, and have still stuck with the program and have still kind of like have done the work and worked with the additional high school fellows, I just want to shout all of you out for keeping on. Because, getting assigned a high school fellow that might not want, that isn't, that doesn't come through for the program, can easily be disappointing and kind of kill morale. And really proud of all of you who have gone through that process, but also are still working with your high school fellows to make sure that you're providing an incredible service. So definitely just want to let you know that we all see your reflections, and that we're with you in this process. So the most common question we'll definitely get is like, how can I, as an advising fellow, see if I'm on track or not? And let's kind of take a deeper dive on this. So, we're 3/4 of the way there almost for the academic year, right? For content. So spring's gone, summer's over, summer's almost over. And so we're really going to focus in on the fall. So with that, I think it's kind of like understanding like the fall is going to be a really big critical time moment for all of you within this process, and how that ends up being critical to establishing the enrollment outcome for your high school fellow. So let's kind of unpack what the fall really looks like. So as we hit into September, we're going to work with you on an introduction to financial aid, really dig deeper into essays. I think this is a big thing that we're noticing as well, is that advising fellows are asking for more advice and more help on essays, and this is really a great place to do that. Also wanted to highlight for those of you who are working with students who are applying to QuestBridge, that deadline is happening September 26th. So really something to look forward to and work towards. October, we're going to be hosting another webinar on financial aid, kind of dealing with specific circumstances. This is also the time where early decision and early admission, early action applications will be submitted, working on those school-specific essays, kind of also making sure that we're digging into the college list review. And then lastly, with November and December, making sure that you're completing the FAFSA, filling out for outside scholarships, really hitting home on all additional application materials. And then for December, we will focus on the CSS profile, having high school fellows submit, those final applications. And then high school fellows will also submit final college lists to matriculate. And lastly, something that we're also going to ask you to do is to create a winter break plan, to make sure that you and your high school fellow are on the same page. One thing I did want to highlight for the fall, before we keep going on, is to make sure that you are focusing on letters of recommendation as well, and that conversation is happening actively now, with your students soliciting letters of rec from their core academic teachers or and obviously their counselors. So really an exciting time period. This is really the bulk of the work as a college advisor is what you're going to be doing and what I think many of you folks signed up for, to be that support system. So I can't tell you how much as a campus lead, I'm just really excited to kind of get started on this process and really put the work behind what, really what the problem that we're trying to solve, Matriculate, and making sure that we can have every single high school fellow submit the best college application that they can. So awesome stuff to see from here. So how can we kind of keep on, how can we tell if we're still on track with your students, right? And so each of you are in different places, right? I think every single high school student that you're working with is in a different spot as soon as from the moment that you receive them from the moment that you start your relationship with them, from so where you are now, and that could vary wildly based off how many high school students you have right now, and that is the case for almost all of your peers. And so understanding like really what's happening in advance, just being aware that FAFSA is coming up, being aware that supplemental essays are coming up, and kind of giving yourself a plan to really work within the structure to put your high school fellow on a plan for success and really put yourself as an advisor on the path to success is really important. And that happens through a variety of means. I think one of the great things that I see you all do is creating a shared Google Doc with important dates and deadlines, right? And what are those important dates and deadlines? So that can be for early application deadlines to colleges, that can be scholarship deadlines, especially those full tuition scholarships that are coming up. And then lastly, milestones. And milestones is a key word that we're going to be using a lot today, but really kind of just like FAFSA submission, college list submission, college application submission, really the things that kind of are big touch points to make sure that we are setting up everyone for success on that point. And then lastly, a resource for you to look at as well is the AF roadmap, which is a great place to kind of see the topic plan of what we're going ahead. And then also the monthly look aheads provide a great resource of things to follow up on and kind of make sure that you are still in the place of like really where you should be with your high school fellow and the topics that you should be covering. And this is a big box. This is our August checklist. And so kind of really, ideally, this is where you are by towards the end of August. Just to kind of do a quick run through, your high school fellow should continue to research and apply to fly-in visits. As a ton of you know, fly-in programs are free for a lot of the students that we work with. And having students be able to go to a fly-in is key. And so that doesn't end just because the summer ends. There are a ton of opportunities in the fall for fly-in programs as well. And so make sure that you're doing your due diligence and that your high school student is doing their due diligence on making sure that they are completing and applying for fly-in programs. We're also making sure that your high school fellow has a finalized balanced college list. And that list includes 8 to 10 schools. We'll talk a little bit more about what that balanced list actually looks like, but definitely we'll talk through this. Your high school fellow should also be deciding what application portal they'll be using to file their applications, whether that's the common application or coalition application. In addition to if your student is from California, Florida, or Texas, that they also know that the state-centric application that they're using as well, and that your high school fellow has created their login information to have easy access to all these application portals. We're also looking to make sure that you have both have looked at the resume and have updated it to include any summer activities that could be applicable. We're also making sure, or you also want to make sure that the high school fellow has registered for the ACT or SAT. This is predominantly like the last one that they'll take before just as they submit to colleges, but more also very, very importantly, making sure that they have applied to the necessary amount of subject tests, especially based if they are applying to selected schools, and again, setting themselves up to make sure that they are prepared to put themselves in the best position as they are applying to colleges. We're also going to look at high school fellows who have finished their online QuestBridge application. Again, if applicable, if your student's been working on these, know that this is something that you also want to take an active role in and being a mentor and an advisor. And then lastly, editing an updated draft of your high school fellow's personal statement. Again, tons of you are going to be in different places with this. Some of you might have high school students that have completed their personal statement and have it down and have been pre-worked and workshopped and is a perfect piece, while some of you may be still working on this as well. So know that we're all at different places here, but ideally, this is kind of where we want to be at the end of August. And now I know there are a ton of you who, again, were just paired this week, who have had students come in through the past few weeks, or who you've just been paired in the summer, and this can look overwhelming to make sure that we have achieved all this in August. So really, let's kind of talk about what it looks like to be working with an accelerated checklist, and know that when you receive your student from Matriculate, that we don't expect you to have one deep dive session to then accomplish every single thing in the checklist from as if you had your student in March. And so if you are someone who just recently got paired or is working on it with a student who's at a different place, know that these are the things that we're trying to have you hit for your student. And so, ideally, so if you have a student that you've just received, really assessing where they are in the college application process is the most important thing. Some students kind of come into this process really having a good picture of what they need to do and really just need an advisor to kind of like be their extra support system, while other students may be starting from square one, and that might be that might bring in a whole other set load of responsibilities and things to check out on, and making sure that you have the resources that you need to work with your student. So being able to assess that, where your high school student is or your high school fellow is, and understanding what resources or what things you have to do to work on with them. At any point, if you do feel like that you are starting from square one and that you're in different places with your high school fellows and feeling overwhelmed by this process, this is an important moment to really touch base with yourself, but also really use the resources around you. So talking to your head advising fellows, talking to other advising fellows, and then also talking to your campus lead. The biggest point that I'm trying to put across here is really that you aren't in this process alone with your high school fellow, and that if you are feeling in a place that you are just really just swamped with the work that you are asked to do, and feel like you're in a point where you can't like feel that you're just overwhelmed by everything that you have to get across to your high school fellow, and know that there are folks out there who are willing to help you in this process so that you can do the best that you can, but also to make sure that that high school student also receives the resources that they need as a member of Matriculate. You also want to assess where they are with college visits and flying programs. Do they know what those are? Have they applied for them? Being a resource for helping those happen. Does your student qualify for full tuition scholarships? So making a plan and being explicit about, are they applying to QuestBridge? Are they applying to Jack Kent Cook? Are they applying for the Gates Scholarship? So again, really assessing and understanding what you're working with to get a better understanding of your workload. The college doing their research and the college list draft. I think these are all really important conversations to have towards the beginning, just to kind of guide your advising to what schools they should be looking at, in addition to the list drafting that'll be happening. And then lastly, the two components of the college application, or two major components at least, with the college essay draft and the application components. So again, these are like the big bullet points that you kind of want to focus on. Don't feel super overwhelmed by just going back to the August checklist and feeling that you have to check every single box. Being able to tailor the checklist to your specific student's need is a huge skill, and something that we really put on our advising fellows. So if you are struggling with how to adjust a certain checklist for a certain student, again, tap into your resources to make sure that you are doing what you can in those spaces. Great. And so let's talk about some milestones and get a deeper dive into the fall. Okay, so milestones. High school fellows are completing the junior curriculum by the end of summer. Guess what? That's now. So understanding that you have completed what you can during the junior year, and really following up on what they've done to make sure that they have they are where they need to be by the end of the summer is very, very important. But then really the big important thing that I want to talk to you all about today is submitting a draft of a balanced college list to matriculate. So this is the first key milestone that we're seeing and that we're asking of our students. In the past, we've actually asked for the college list to be at a later date. We're asking for this now for a multitude of reasons, but in reality, what we're looking for here is a draft, right? And so many folks have come to us, just really asking for an extension or asking for a better idea of like what schools need to be on this list. And in reality, what the draft is supposed to be is a draft, and that our team of college list reviewers are going to be looking at this as if it was a draft. So know that this is really just to get some key insight onto what your student is thinking at this point and at this time. And so that the feedback that comes out of it comes at a better opportune moment, so that feedback can actually have some impact, as opposed to waiting to when your student may already have a more solidified list where the feedback might not make much of an impact. So know, for those of you who are really nervous about this milestone, this is a draft, and we want to be there for your student as they do this. So if you see yourself struggling on providing the list, make sure to let your campus lead know, make sure to let your head advising fellow know, but know that this is a draft, and this isn't supposed to be this big thought out, well done college list draft that is perfect and balanced and meets every single quality that every college access program is looking for. So know that this is meant to be at an opportunity, at a time where folks can provide the best level of feedback and then have the highest level of impact. We're also going to be, for the fall, you're also looking at college exploration visits, completing the FAFSA, applying to at least one scholarship program. Know that in December, you're looking at the necessary CSS profile application, and especially working with priority deadlines. Applying to a balance list of colleges, we'll talk about that later on. And then once we get into the spring, we'll really look at these milestones and creating a college list transition plan, meeting with advising fellows to really review college decisions and financial aid packages. And all of it is to get towards that final goal of a high school fellow enrolling in their best fit, affordable college choice that is incredible and amazing, and really just serves the purpose of what we are as an organization and the work that you're trying to do as an advising fellow. So how are these used, and what are the expectations for them? So the milestones are really used as a way to frame your planning, right? So think about these as touch points or just like key moments in the year where you want to work towards hitting each milestone and making sure that you are setting up for the best possible, you're in the best possible place to get these things done. The high school fellows will report their progress through monthly survey. If your high school fellow doesn't submit a survey, we'll contact you and really try to have you nudge them to get us an update. And then really, if your high school fellow is falling behind, again, tapping into your resources, like your head advising fellow, like your campus lead for support, but doing this before the milestone deadline. And so for those of you who might be struggling on seeing FAFSA happen before the deadline, understanding that you have folks that are there to help you, but then also making sure that folks have the capacity to help you, and giving them enough time to do these things is really key. And so being able to set yourself up for success means that doing this at a place where it's earlier is really, really key and really important. So as some of you saw, we're going to do a little bit of deep dive with the college list review. That is going to be due in 2 days. And so making sure that due on the 15th. And so making sure that is set and good to go is important here. So what is the college list review, right? If you are an advising fellow, you are reviewing your college list. So let's talk about what this also looks like. So already you are working with your high school fellow on developing their draft, right? That's what this first part of the process looks like. It's really what the first parts of, or the end of junior year looks like as they transition into the summer and into senior year. High school fellows then submit their college list form. And what happens is we have a great group of folks who are mostly private college counselors reviewing each list and then providing additional feedback. What happens is that a high school fellow will then get their list of feedback, which we'll take a look at. But then what what they ideally do is then take this list and this feedback to you as their advising fellow to discuss the feedback in developing their final college list. And what is the goal of this, right? So how do we create the list of a balanced college list? And a lot of you will already know this, but kind of just making sure we can run this down. So a balanced list is going to include at least 8 schools, at least 4 total high graduation rate schools, and at least 1 high graduation rate safety school, 2 reach schools, 2 match schools, 2 safety schools. And we're also looking at the schools, making sure that they're an academic fit, that the schools are a social fit, and that the schools are a financial fit. And there are big key tells to when a list isn't balanced, or when there is a list that hasn't been super well thought out. So again, you'll hear this example all the time, but if you are applying to a list that is all Ivies, even if you are an exceptional student, that doesn't mean you are guaranteed admission to any Ivy. And just because if you're on the top tier of students doesn't, again, guarantee you admission, but all those schools are different academic fits, all those schools are different social fits, and understanding the differences between those schools is really, really key and important. And this whole exercise for looking at a college list and what that looks like is going to be a very thorough, deep examination that your high school student is going through, and understanding and being a support system as they go through this process, but then also giving them the tools and resources so that they can come to a good decision for what is a good fit for them, and applying to that list of reaches and safeties and targets is very key and very important. So let's actually kind of take a deeper dive into what this process looks like with the college list review. This is what our reviewers look at. So they get a high-level view of the student. So they will see what their name is, what are the activities they're involved with, an estimated family income, an academic profile, and so some really, and a quick blurb of the types of schools that they're interested in. So know that this isn't a ton of information in assessing a student, right? This is a quick snapshot of who someone is, and so as an expert in their field, they can only make so much, only come to the student with so much based off this information. So this is why you as an advising fellow are also really key and integral to this process, because you have an additional layer of context to really help in advising and to really digest the feedback that the college list review specialist will give. So they look at this and then they make those recommendations based on the high school fellow's preferences. In this slide, this is actually what an example of the feedback that the high school fellow receives. And so this is getting a chance to see, like, based off their student profile, college preferences, and existing list, they'll get some additional schools that will be suggested to consider. In addition, and kind of get an idea of what those things are. So it'll be in 3 different buckets in the sense of additional schools, and then schools that they might want to reconsider. So if their list is very, very reach heavy, kind of just understanding that this isn't reach heavy, and like if a list is reach heavy, understanding that this isn't a reflection on a student not being able to get in, but also being realistic in the sense of what kind of options will they have getting out. And so understanding that this is, that the reviewers are looking at content here. And so understanding like the profiles and based off everything here, they can kind of make this assessment to say, if this list is reach heavy, here are some schools that may not fit with this reach heavy list. And in addition to those 2 buckets, the last bucket is some things to consider, and kind of a reminder on what a balanced list looks like. So one thing to note in the feedback for a college list is some students may take this personally and feeling that if they get feedback that their list is reach heavy or that they might not qualify, it isn't a reflection on who they are as a student, but in an example of like really what this process looks like, in the sense of like, if we go back to if a student's list is Duke, Georgetown, Stanford, and again, even if they are an exceptional student, that doesn't guarantee admission at every single selective college. So being able to mix in those high graduation rate schools, for all types of, so there are high graduation rate target schools, there are high graduation rate safety schools for your students, and being able to mix those in to make sure that your student has an equal chance at enrollment outcomes and feeling that they don't come time for enrollment, that they aren't selecting between one or two schools, and again, are feeling really good about where they are this time in the spring. So using this feedback is going to be very, very key and very important to really setting up your student for success in the future. So some next steps. So once you get this feedback, if the list is balanced and includes a great match and fit, sounds awesome, right? And so, keep those goals, conduct your final check-in, see if there's something additional that these, for your high school fellows want to explore, and then kind of get started on the really heavy duty workload on completing those applications for that select list of schools. If your high school fellows list still needs some further work, be intentional about the feedback that you're digesting and really discussing with each other. Is your high school fellow open to these suggestions, right? And know that this is a continuing conversation, and working together on this list is very key and very important. And highlighting these things and kind of delving into this conversation from a place that this isn't, that the feedback they'll get isn't a reflection on who they are as a student, but again, just taking into context what has worked best for students within this process. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about the College Board Opportunity Scholarship. So this is something that that the College Board is doing, and the College Board Opportunity Scholarship, it awards student scholarships for making progress in their college process. So this is done through a monthly series of drawings, and students increase the number of entries by completing more tasks throughout the college access process. So students who complete all the tasks are entered or receive an entry to be eligible to receive a $40,000 scholarship. So what are the tasks that they need to do? And so this is a full list. This is also a resource that you can pull up on the curriculum base, but it's really doing either the hours of prep on Khan Academy to practice for the SAT, updating their college list, completing the FAFSA, and then applying to 2+ colleges. So if your students have already started this process, great. But really, something this is just an additional scholarship opportunity that we are trying to promote to our students. Again, it varies things that they should be doing as is. And so being eligible to then receive extra scholarship funds is just a great thing, and a thing that we want to definitely plug for all of you. So again, talking to your students about doing CBOS and making sure that they are maintaining all of these milestones to be eligible to at least receive the scholarship. So how to enter. Again, so for creating a College Board account, so that's for the SAT or the subject test, they should already have that. Opting into the student search service, and then lastly, signing up for Khan Academy and then linking their account to their College Board account. These are the 3 steps that are necessary and required for CBOS eligibility. And then lastly, wanted to talk a little bit about financial aid and kind of what to expect as we start going into the fall. I think a ton of you have also had questions about what this process looks like. So this isn't a deep dive, but I did want to preview some items for you as you kind of get into working with your students. So what can you do to make sure that your high school fellow has what they need for the financial aid process? So this is an important time to check in with your HSF to see if they have all the necessary documents. And so for most folks, that's just going to be their parents' tax returns. And so if your high school fellow is able to provide both parents' tax returns, that's pretty much a great place to start, and really what will be critical for you to complete this process. Some potential issues and pitfalls, though, is if your students don't have these documents, right? And so having this conversation is very important just to kind of get a better sense of like, if they don't have their tax returns, what are the other means of ways to go about this? And so really kind of understanding what other documents you might need to pull up for your students. And again, tapping the resources and tapping the network here is going to be your best friend, because you're not supposed to know every single financial aid situation and be able to tackle it head on. So if you do see issues or pitfalls, again, highlighting this for yourself, but highlighting it for something to talk about in the future as well. How to be proactive in this process is also very important. So especially while you're doing your research for the college list, a ton of schools will have a net price calculator tool, and that provides a great estimate on what your student will be paying for once they get to school within their estimated family contribution. And so thinking about how this process only also happens if you are applying for a FAFSA in the CSS. So this is a way to kind of like let your student know that that they have very real tangible benefits to eventually hitting these milestones later on, and then going from there. And then lastly, just wanted to highlight a situation of some norms that we've also want to highlight for advising fellows. As an advising fellow, you should not be filling out a FAFSA for your student. This is just this goes into an area that many folks would not be comfortable with. Being able to see their parents' tax returns and has a ton of sensitive information that we want to kind of keep a wall between you and protect you as an advising fellow to not be involved in that process, but know that this is something that they can work on with their high school counselor, or if you feel that they don't have the resources to fill out the FAFSA, then to again, tap the network to find out a specific situation that we can do to get your high school fellow the resources they need to fill out those forms. But again, do not sit down and fill out their FAFSA for them. That's just a line that we don't want you to cross as well. And then lastly, going to plug in a few things here too for in the upcoming months. We will have an Intro to Financial Aid webinar where we'll definitely talk about this more in depth. But again, just want to preview this for you here. And then lastly, in October, we'll be hosting a webinar on FAFSA, the special circumstances that you might run into or are already running into, and providing the space for Q&A. So know that is happening in October. So definitely keep your questions. If there's anything pressing, let your campus lead know, let your head advisor fellow know how to get ahead from there. Cool. And some next steps. Ensure your high school fellows submit their draft college list. Do that. If you are struggling, make sure you tap somebody on why you're struggling, but then let somebody know if you don't see this happening soon. If you haven't already, schedule your August advising session. Keep that momentum strong. I think it's normal to have sometimes to have that really high engagement once you get initially paired in the spring, a dip in the summer, but the fall is a really key important time to make sure that you're meeting with your high school fellow and that you know as much as they do on the work that they're doing. And August is a great place to kind of like set up that plan. So do that. Submitting your outstanding session summaries, people read those. Please do those. Those are really important. It gives us a better idea of really the context of what you're meeting with. In the summer webinar before this, we provided a great example of like what to look for in a session summary if you're struggling to fill those out. So please, please, please do those. Monthly report is coming out, and fall kickoff meetings are coming out soon. Know that campus leads will be on your campus to ask questions, but really excited to get the fellowships together on your campuses to kind of see the whole group and get to talk about what we've been doing in the summer, but also get a better idea of the work that we're going to do ahead. And that is all. Really great talking to all of you. Thank you so much.